begin by congratulating all of you who have been selected to take part in this most important initiative, and I think it was quite original and innovative and a very good idea to pick a student from each county in Ireland to visit the Somme this summer. I think it was an original and an empathetic decision, and I think as well the idea to pay tribute to a soldier from the county of the students who had lost their lives during the First World War was quite an inspirational idea. Some counties have nearly complete lists of all those who lost their lives in that terrible war, but others are already underway doing something similar. But your own project, I understand that to be chosen, each of you had to submit an essay outlining your interest in this area, and that suggested why you would be a suitable participant. Now, given the large number of people who were interested, it is, of course, a great achievement to have been chosen to represent your county, and Trais Liam live Asacht on Gradamshin of Wintermark. And recent years, people have shown that they are very interested in drawing on these new opportunities. I should say, lest I forget it, because it would be it's so important to pay tribute to the History Teachers Association. Trais Liam le Asach Niawanas and Achantograja, Acanabar in Shit Biakla Goklo, Contovact Star, Nitirish, and one star Nitirish, star and down, a Cora foil, the Denioga Nitirisha. This continual work of teaching history, and teaching history in an open-minded way that allows new versions, new facts, new materials to be taken into account is a great achievement from history teachers, and they are very, very important. And this is a very good project of theirs. World War I, I should say as well, was a catastrophic war in my view. I think that it is decades now separate us from that time. And not only the historians to which I've been referred to, but I think in Ireland generally, many people now see that there are stories to be recovered, there are lives to be respected, and your capacity to engage with the individual story of your own adopted soldier and effectively writes that soldier back into history. It is incredible to think of what the position was of those who, from poverty or whatever, may have enrolled to take place in an army, go through incredible battles, including the great slaughter that was the Somme, that went on for so long, and then to come home and not be able to enter their communities with full appreciation of the circumstances that had driven them to this war. It's very likely that your own grandparents weren't born at the time so many of the young men lost their lives, but you've reached back, and it's a great exercise in compassion, a value that is never more important than at the present time, when we are required to think much more inclusively than we do, be it in relation to so many issues, including migration, but also it gives a genuine recognition of the importance of restoring people who've been excluded from history back into history. I was often struck myself during the decade of commemorations. I've taken part in a number of important events that included the erection of a cross of sacrifice at Glasnevin in recognition of the Irish who died in the war fighting for the British Army, ceremonies at Mons to mark the beginning of the war, and very moving ceremonies at Gallipoli, and remembering the huge number of men, include thousands of Irish, who died so terribly there. And I was struck above all else by something as I look around a room full of young people. More than half of the young people who died in the last months of World War I were youngsters. They were under 19 years of age. They were running out of, as it were, of human material for the slaughter of that war. And these commemorations are useful to us today, ethically, in encouraging us to include everybody, but on a number of levels, more poignantly, I suppose, because it suggests a deeper understanding of how disastrous a global war can be. And even if a disastrous global war took place, wiping out the prospects and dreams of a generation with the terrible consequences of their families, the response to the war was equally important. And of course, that First World War and the response to it did not prevent a second. I think that the war that you are going now to rescue stories from is one that stands as a terrible monument to the failures of politics and, of course, to the arrogance and destructiveness of empire. The war, in more recent times, as I have said, it's very different now, 100 years on, the way we look at it, as, for example, the way that some of my others might have looked at it when we were 50 years on. The difference is, of course, that now we have more materials. We have diaries, letters, personal papers have emerged from families and so on, and they enable us to get at first hand the experience of the trenches. The horror, it was, I think, the horrors of an industrialized, the war, as I said, they tell us of the daily experience of those in the trenches. It was this war which first showed the world the horrors of an industrialized military with its gas, machine guns, artillery, and bombs. And in the coming days, you will all visit graves and memorials to the fallen soldier that you've chosen. And these, be prepared for it. It's something I've done in the past, and I think it will be moving. These are significant moments of reclamation and restoration in a historical perspective that you're doing for us all. Those young men of whom you've written in your essays, they were young people with the same interests and hopes and aspirations as you have. And we can see from their records, some of which were read, I remember, at the ceremonies in Gallipoli, as they were read in Mons and Liège that I have attended. They were interested in the same things: sport, adventure, travel, dancing, romance. Some of them spoke about the beaches that they were familiar with. And their lives were taken from them so cruelly and needlessly, and it stands as a call to all of us to make sure that yours and future generations should never have to suffer that same tragic fate. A young generation like yourselves must succeed where other generations have failed. We are already, as I speak, paying terrible prices for the failure of diplomacy, where, in fact, it wasn't run its full course. We're living in the legacy of wars that should not have taken place. So I'm sure that you taking part through this program, including, as you will have analysed, the horror of war and what it represents, should press us all to cherish and nurture peace, which doesn't come from the sky and doesn't come from others, but has in fact to be transacted by all of us together. And I hope that you will be successful in your efforts to achieve peaceful resolution of conflicts. It's a great lesson to carry forward, a great project, and I think that you have started so well in this engaged, proactive exercise for which you have volunteered as proactive citizens. I so thank you all for coming here today and for participating in this inspiring initiative. Thank you very much.
I would just like to, as the director of this project, to thank President Higgins for hosting us here in Áras and Uachtaráin. I would also like to thank a number of people who have helped in this project over the last couple of months and years. I'd like to thank in particular Marion Harkin, MEP, and I think as young people, as we go to the Somme this weekend, I think it's also important that we visit the European Parliament. And I think it's worth remembering that exactly 100 years ago this week, European countries were slaughtering each other. And in this weekend, on Monday, you are going to visit the Parliament, where European politicians now cooperate and help each other and work together. So that is progress. Students from my own school in Glenties have gone through 73,000 names, and they have identified every single every single soldier from Ireland whose name is on this memorial. And there's nearly 3,000 names. And that's probably not all of them, because some of them didn't give an address. So I'd like to call upon two of my students, Ryan and Kelly, to present this to the President. And this is the record of all the Irish-born soldiers who are on the memorial. So thank you, everyone, and I just hope that we have a really, really successful trip, and I know you'll make it special. So thanks a lot.